In this section on Enmo economics and money supply, I should perhaps start by pointing out that the idea of governments printing their own money is not an original thought for which I can claim any credit. The lawyer and writer Ellen Brown has long championed the principle, and her thought-provoking book, Web of Debt, should be read by anyone with an interest in this subject. Abraham Lincoln provided the most spectacular proof for the principle when his government financed the American Civil War with debt-free paper money known as greenbacks, based on nothing more substantial than the government's declaration that they would be legal tender. So successful was it that Lincoln wanted to introduce it as a permanent model for producing money. But we all know what happened to him before he had the chance to do so. And more recently, a powerful paper titled The Chicago Plan Revisited was published by Beans and Kumoff, two economists working for the IMF of all places, which also lends considerable weight to the possibility. People new to the idea of governments producing their own debt-free money think, well, quite naturally, if it was so easy to do, why don't they do it? The answer lies mostly in the power of the private banking system to control political decision makers, essentially by bribing the decision makers. Although that word is obviously given more watered-down, publicly acceptable names such as lobbying or donating, the cynicism is such that bribes are paid almost equally to both competing parties in the fixed two-horse race that passes for Western democracy. Nomi Prins, a writer and once a managing director of the giant American bank Goldman Sachs, explains it like this in her excellent and revealing book, Other People's Money. Nomi Prins says, "The amount of clout the financial sector wields in Washington can't be underestimated. The FIRE sector, i.e. the financial, insurance and real estate sector, tops the list of contributions to Washington every year. It donated over $1.3 billion over 25 years, 57% to Republicans and 43% to Democrats. During the three election cycles that spanned 1998 through 2002, the ratio tilted towards the Republican Party, who received 60% of FIRE's political funds. Goldman Sachs led contributions in the securities and investments subcategory in 7 out of 8 election cycles. It forked over $7 million in donations during the 2002 and 2004 election cycles, and had doled out a grand total of $17 million since 1990. The only year Goldman placed second in the category was 1994, when it gave $957,045, just second behind Merrill Lynch's $1.3 million. Although this example relates specifically to the US, it's very similar here in the UK too, as it is in most so-called democracies. So why do banks donate such serious money to politicians? Is it because of their belief in democracy? Given that there are few systems more secretive and plutocratic than the murky world of private banking, that's rather unlikely. So do they do it because politicians will do what's best for the 99%? I don't think so. Because our political decision makers are so dependent on the bankers for their election financing, they're obviously reluctant to do anything that might be frowned upon by the bankers. And stripping bankers of their monopoly right to control money supply would very definitely be frowned upon. The other concern that might be voiced by those new to the idea of governments printing their own money is inflation. Because if too much money is in the circulation at any one time, it can lose its purchasing power. The existing system uses loan repayments to banks together with taxation as a means of withdrawing money from circulation, and this is a fairly effective method for resolving currency inflation. Another possibility is using a system of demurrage, whereby newly produced money steadily decreases in value from the moment it comes into circulation. A continual production of new money to match demand compensates for the apparent loss in value of aging money. Demurrage is also an effective way of dealing with currency inflation. So, although inflation is indeed a reasonable concern, it's a manageable concern, and not necessarily as calamitous as the bankers would have us believe. The most important thing, as far as government and money inflation is concerned, is to ensure that the supply and price of essential goods and services is closely controlled. Providing that people can get essential goods and services quite easily, the prices of non-essential goods and services can do what they like, as they often do already. It really doesn't matter. Although the power of the bankers is the main problem, there's another significant reason why governments have not assumed for themselves the responsibility for controlling money supply. And that's that governments have not yet devised a practical monetary system whose core purpose is to serve the people, not because of the difficulty in doing so, but because of the power the bankers have to prevent it from happening. Monetary systems have always been intended to serve the super rich, not the 99%. Old monetary models used rare commodities and precious metals whose ownership and supply could be tightly controlled by powerful elites. Modern monetary systems use debt. Both debt management and ownership of precious commodities can be concentrated into the hands of the bankers, which therefore gives the bankers full control of the supply of money. But there's something else upon which money supply could be based, something which has been identified as the core source of wealth for a very long time: human labour. An equitable system of money supply based on human labour has never gained significant traction for any length of time, not because of any flaw in the idea, or because of any particular difficulty in devising such a system, but because it would give control of money supply to ordinary people, as the ultimate owners of labour, and as far as the 1% are concerned, that would never do. The importance of human labour to the value of money cannot be underestimated. This fact was noticed not only by Karl Marx, but also by the father of capitalism himself, Adam Smith. For the following quotation was written not by Marx, as many might think, but by Adam Smith. Because Smith said, "Labour was the first price, the original purchase money that was paid for all things. It was not by gold and silver, but by labour, that all the wealth of the world was originally purchased, and its value, to those who possess it and who want to exchange it for some new productions, is precisely equal to the quantity of labour which it can enable them to purchase or command." And in case the reader hadn't quite got the point, he went on, "Labour alone, therefore, never varying in its own value, is alone the ultimate and real standard by which the value of all commodities can at all times and places be estimated and compared. It is their real price. Money is their nominal price only." There have been many attempts by ordinary working people to derive an economy based on the value of human labour, from the leveller and digger communities that emerged in 17th century England to the cooperative societies that blossomed in the early 19th century. And today there's the huge Mondragon organisation of the Basque Country and tens of thousands of small worker cooperatives, which are still thriving all around the world. So the effectiveness of an economy based on human labour cannot be disputed. It obviously works. The fact that Western governments have deliberately chosen not to adopt it as national policy is therefore not because of any flaws in the model. Western governments ignore it for one reason and one reason only. It eliminates the power of the private banking system to control our political decision makers through their control of money supply. Nowhere actually uses Enmo economics because it's my invention and almost no one has ever heard of it. However, it's based on economic justice for all and proposes a monetary system where the state fully recognises the worth of human labour. But it also allows private banks to use the traditional monetary system. In the next section, I'll try to explain Enmo in more detail using a thought experiment.